Or they'll
Yeah.
Good thing we edit this.
Oh, you do?
This
Okay,
but
good.
we don't really edit it, so we'll chop it. We do some back and forth editings of your full frame and my full frame. But this does air today. We do a really quick turnaround
Okay,
on this,
good.
so this will come out today. Okay. Well, there's a really cool event that is happening October 4th, I believe, in Dallas, Texas, that you could sign up to. The National Conversation. This is with Colonel McGregor. Andrew Napolitano is going to be there, Natalie Brunell. And also, our guest today is moderating this cool event. Dr. Olga Ravasi is a political strategist and a national security expert recognized by the U.S. Directorate of National Intelligence. She's advised U.S. agencies, corporations, and international organizations on foreign policy, counterterrorism, and border security. She currently chairs Serbian Americans for Trump and was even named as a candidate for U.S. ambassador to Bosnia and Herzegovina. Dr. Olga Ravasi, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Tell us about this cool event. I think this sounds so great. I might even show up myself just to check it out, maybe if I'm in the area. But tell us about it.
That would be fantastic. And so several of us got together, including Colonel Doug McGregor, who I don't need to introduce too much to your audience.
Right.
And we were discussing what the next steps should be, given that we do have President Trump now, but our time is very limited. How long we have specific presidents, how long we have elected officials, and then what the American people still feel. So the national conversation is imagined as the leading edge of America's fight for a new path forward, essentially, a new way that may be countering the duopoly of the uniparty. That was the idea. And one prevalent thing here is that free speech must be kind of that golden goose that is enshrined in our Constitution, and that we want to hear from the American people. Clearly, I think there is an appetite for something like this. So, as you described the panel, I will be moderating. Colonel Doug McGregor is spearheading this entire effort. We will have Judge Andrew Napolitano, who is a constitutional um, judge and an attorney, constitutional expert, and then Natalie Brunell, who is an expert in finance, crypto. So we want to position this as an open forum where the Americans can reclaim the public space. And actually, we don't want to speak at them, we want to speak with them. So we are titling it essentially as The Microphone is Yours, meaning we will start with some of these current issues, and we want to hear from the audience. We want them to participate in this discussion, and we want to make sure that none of this is stifled. It is based on free speech. So whatever ideas, whatever issues the Americans are currently feeling that are disenfranchising them from their elected officials, from the uniparty, from the duopoly, from the way they voted. But anytime it seems we vote and we have this enthusiasm, one way or the other, you end up like getting John McCain. So we still want to hear from the American people, and we are planning, depending on how this goes in Dallas, we want to start in Dallas, and then do maybe 3 or 4 of these a year, depending on funding, depending on finance, obviously on money. If we can get enough support, and if we have people who will come and listen and speak and participate and discuss the key issues plaguing them and plaguing this nation, from domestic to foreign, we will go around the country. The panel would be different every time, and it's not just going to be a panel. We can do film screenings, we can do a lot of different things that will actually get the Americans engaged. So that is the idea. And we want to be present in the room with the truth being spoken amongst us rather than being heard on TV, being censored. And then, like we see in Great Britain and other countries, you can be imprisoned while you are, putting your opinion out there into the social media or, criticize. Well, no one is beyond criticism. We are allowed to criticize anything and everyone. It's a fair game. And if you want to participate, we invite everybody to come to Dallas. It's going to be at this fantastic museum. It's called Frontiers of Flight Museum. So just coming to see that museum is a fantastic experience on its own. So again, thenationalconversation.org, this is where people can go and find out more about us.
Yeah, I do have that link down below in case people want to buy tickets and get over to Dallas and join on this. It looks cool. There's a VIP cocktail, a main event, and then a private dinner
Yes, so we are
with all of this.
anticipating that we are going to have that open forum, open public space, where we're going to discuss some of these topics with the American people. And then obviously we are inviting some of our higher donors and people who really want to sit down privately and have a discussion with Colonel McGregor, myself, Natalie, and Judge Napolitano privately about some of these pressing issues and how we move ahead and how we truly position the American people at the helm of a movement that is going to build from the bottom up. And it's going to be, as I said, a third way and a fundamental seed that is capable of challenging the
Mm,
duopoly of the uniparty.
yeah. Let's talk about some of the problems that we're having that you anticipate probably would be brought up. Let's start with foreign policy because I think the big thing a lot of us Americans is we're wanting a lot of the resources to be brought back home rather than spent everywhere else in the world. So that being said, many of us believe, and I'm sure you agree, we have way too many military bases. We're waging war all around the world, right? We get into a bunch of conflicts. I don't know what you think, but in my opinion, for Israel, we're basically fighting wars on their behalf because our politicians are completely bought off. What would be but the big question I think is even though we complain about all these things that are going on around and we say we don't want this anymore, we want all this to stop, all this funding of wars and whatnot. What should be the foreign policy, do you think, of the United States?
Well, so that is a wonderful question, and it is a complex question because we have ran our foreign policy post Soviet time. If you connect us and link us into NATO, which has post Soviet time become obsolete, our foreign policy turned from the defensive into very aggressive, very offensive, and we have created a global American empire. The empire is unsustainable. So is NATO. The NATO really doesn't have a role. It did not have a role post-Soviet, post the Warsaw Pact collapsing.
Mhm.
But the generals that were participating in this shenanigans, they actually got used to having these excellent benefits. So NATO needed to reinvent itself. So NATO reinvented itself through the collapse of Yugoslavia, essentially. But so our foreign policy must be very sensible, and it is what was dictated to us as the founding principle: no foreign entanglements. And I think that must be the basis of our foreign policy. Now, the neocons and the hawks will accuse you immediately of being an isolationist. Here's the thing: the United States cannot be isolated. We still are the superpower, we still are the economic power, although now the multipolar world is emerging and we just have to face up to that fact. But the fact that it's emerging is partly our fault because we were the hegemon, um, and we kind of created the rules. But the
Mhm.
rule, this entire premise of the rules based order, but it was rules for thee, not for me. And it was very hypocritical. And the nations around the world realized that it's hypocritical. We have done some horrific things when it comes to implementing foreign policy. And yes, you are right. We have been fighting wars that don't benefit the American people, do not benefit our national security, actually threaten our national security. And we have been fighting them on behalf of other entities. And that is actually the issue that we must resolve. The American people should not be enslaved by these foreign interests. So then we talk about foreign aid, we talk about how much of this we fund. It is all taxpayer money going through NATO, going through these bureaucratic institutions that are now divvying the money amongst themselves, and in fact are running this through the unelected bureaucrats that nobody ever voted for,
Mhm.
particularly the American people. So we go back to the Balkans and the 1990s. We go back to the collapse of the Soviet Union and what has come of that. I look at the conference that just happened in China. You have 70% of the global population joining together to essentially oppose us. And if you look at the lineup of these nations that are now becoming friendly, well, these nations were not particularly friendly with each other, but they are being forced by our hawkish and flawed foreign policy into each other's arms, which
Hmm.
is why the multipolar world is emerging. And we are not the global hegemon, and we should not be the global hegemon, and we should not be policing the world. So that is the view that I have personally of the foreign policy, simply because I have been at the forefront of working on this. And currently, President Trump in his first term, he has really good political instincts and he understands what is happening in the world. But I also feel he continues to be stifled. He was stifled in his first administration. He is now being stifled in the second by the simple diplomatic void. You have mentioned that even my name was tossed out as a candidate for a specific diplomatic position. We actually don't have any diplomats on the ground. We have 71 vacancies in our embassies, and we have 72 Biden holdovers. 40 of the nominees are stuck in queue in the Senate who is not even attempting to confirm these people. So there is no one to, even if there is a foreign policy, there's no one to implement it on the ground. So we have a
That seems
complete void.
strange. Why is that, do you think?
Well, because the swamp, whatever we call the swamp, the permanent bureaucracy, the deep state, whatever you want to name it, we kind of understand what it is. You have the intelligence agencies that are all in cahoots with each other, essentially running a rogue foreign policy. And this has been going on for decades. The American people have just woken up to this reality. But some of us that have been at the forefront of this, as I said, we have known this for a very long time, and we've been tooting the horn of this, but nobody to listen. Um, you go back to USAID, you go back to National Endowment for Democracy, you go back to every single agency that's been weaponized around the globe to start foreign wars, and to essentially enrich those who are in charge, to the benefit of small minority, to the detriment of many, not only here as taxpayers, as tax-paying Americans, but to the detriment of many around the world. It's been a
Hmm.
bloodshed, and we have left a trail of blood behind us. So again, the criticism will be, well, this is just an isolationist foreign policy. No, it's not. We can communicate with other countries. We can have an economic exchange, which is what President Trump really wants to do. And he wanted to implement it in his first administration. He didn't want to get stuck in these political conversations. He didn't want to get stuck in these frozen conflicts that have been going on for decades. But yet, you look back, to Ukraine, for example. You had regime change, open regime change, and colored revolutions that have spanned from the Balkans, from the collapse of Yugoslavia, into Ukraine, into the Middle East. So ultimately, it's a big transfer of wealth, because you have the military industrial complex that is consistently enriching themselves. You have the big banking that is benefiting from this. And you have the detriment of just the regular people who are bearing the brunt of all of this all around the world. And then you
Yeah.
have figures like Victoria Nuland, who go out into the middle of colored revolution that we actually, midwife, and she's handing out muffins and croissants to the quote unquote revolutionaries for hire that we have paid for. And these revolutionaries for hire have gone from country to country, funded by our government, funded by our agencies, funded by, Soros NGOs. They are everywhere. And all of it was paid by us. So I think I've tried to answer that short question in a long way. They are enriching themselves. There's a lot of money in war. War is a racket to the detriment of all of us.
Right. Right. Certainly, I'm for a strong defense. I mean, the country needs to absolutely be able to defend itself.
100%. 100%.
But of course, we just abandoned defense all entirely, right? We just created the Department of War.
Yeah.
At least it's honest. It's more honest than the Department of Defense. I would like to go back to the Department of Defense and have that actually be honest, because I would like it to be a defense department, specifically.
Well,
But
that's an interesting, if I just may
yeah,
interrupt there. What is really truly the threat that we are facing? Because my deep belief is that our threat is more internal than external. I don't think economically, yes. I mean, we obviously have adversaries, with the rising powers of China, of Russia, of
Sure.
India. You look at the BRICS countries, but here's a novel idea. Why don't we work with the BRICS countries? Why don't we become part of BRICS and actually, you know,
Yeah.
not infiltrate, obviously, but work with them on the economic platform? They're not looking to threaten us in any way militarily, but they're looking to work with us as well. And I think
The problem
President Trump understands that.
maybe he does, but I think the problem is that the United States for many decades has built its main export to be war. And when you
100%.
build your economy around war, then you have to keep war going. And
Yeah.
so that is why, and I mean, it's nonsensical because China doesn't want war with the United
No.
States. I mean, China's not interested and they're not posturing for war towards us or anything, but we certainly are posturing towards them regularly, flexing against them, saying, doing all kinds of things in order to try to intimidate or scare China using war. But really, and I think China doesn't even flinch, just like Russia doesn't flinch, because they know that it's just about the military industrial complex. It's not really even about whether we're actually going to go to war with China or go to war with Russia. We never have. It's just, it's, I think they even see through it and think, oh, you guys just have
It's
to
a
have
bluff.
an excuse. Yeah, it's just an excuse to continue making a bunch of weapons and building a bunch of bases because that's your only export. That's your main money driver.
And
And
that is
so
really
we have to
sad that,
continue that.
our economy is based on that.
Well, and what's even more sad is that there's a lot of little countries that get caught in the crossfire, literally, because
Exactly.
we are not going to wage war with China. We're not going to wage war with Russia. So we wage war with these little countries and topple them and conduct regime change and do all of these various different things. Although many of the regime change, I would argue throughout the Middle East and even in Africa has been at the behest of Israel. I mean, I personally think our biggest threat, like you said, is from within, but it's the money interests of the military industrial complex that want to keep things going, and they're in cahoots with, I think, the Israeli interests that, I mean, look, if you're the money making interest, if you're let's say you don't care, and I'm sure a lot of them don't, a lot of the military industrial guys, they don't care at all about Israel. They're not Zionists, they're not, I mean, they just don't care. But what they care is that this gives them an excuse to make a lot of weapons,
Yeah.
and that's what they do care about. And so it's good for them to have instability somewhere. It's good for them to want to wreak havoc somewhere in order to be able to have an excuse to manufacture more weapons and place more soldiers on the ground and have more bases. And that's a money making scheme.
It
And so
is.
I think the two groups are in cahoots. And I think the Israelis don't give a shit about the military industrial complex. But what they like is that they like money. They know that the military industrial complex likes money, and they can certainly hand them conflict after conflict after conflict to help them make some money. And so they work in cahoots,
Yes.
and we, the American people, end up, I think,
Footing the bill.
well, in Europe in particular, I think really suffers the most because where do all the refugees go? They go to Europe.
Yes.
I mean, and then there's this double talk out of the mouths of conservatives, which I don't understand, which is primarily, I mean, I think everybody's concerned about the refugee issue and an influx of immigrants into all of the Western nations. But I mean, to complain about all of these Muslims flooding into all of the Western nations and then bombing their countries at the same time, I mean, what do we expect?
True.
They got to go somewhere. The people
Well,
have to
and
go
why are
somewhere.
they there? What is the reason? So that is what we have to tackle essentially. What is the core reason for these people to move? Yes, and I agree with you. There is certainly concerted effort to change specific demographics of certain countries. I do believe that, but at the
You
same
do?
time,
I'm curious about that. I mean, I don't know if I believe that, but I because I just not I it's not that I don't believe it, I just don't know if I do believe it. I'm neutral on that
I
point.
think we sort of see it, but I don't think that is the dominant force. The force is precisely what you outlined. It is constantly waging war somewhere, and you
Yeah,
have an expectation that people must remain in a war zone or they will seek refuge. Well, they will seek refuge
right.
where it's essentially safe. However, given my background, my experience, my work on transnational crimes and counterterrorism, these things sort of work hand in glove with each other. And there's constantly cause and effect, but it's kind of like one of those, was it the chicken or the egg first? And certainly
Yeah.
it was the chicken of war first, before these people thought, okay, well, let me now go to a different country. There is something to be said about the demographics of people that are coming to Europe, for example, because if you look at the southern flank of these immigrants arriving through the Balkans, through Greece, through Albania, through Serbia, and going into Europe, most of the time, 90% of time, you will see males, you will see, military age males. You rarely see families with children, with women, elderly. That is not very prevalent. So I think both sides are guilty, because look, the Democrats are all about, and which is why we're talking about kind of shoving aside the uniparty. The Democrats are talking about, oh, let's be tolerant, let's be open, let's bring everybody in, but then we turn into a dumping ground for everyone, and people are not vetted. People are just kind of entering everywhere. But on the other side, you have the neocons who are constantly starting these wars, and people who are afflicted by these wars have nowhere to go. So yes, naturally, they will seek refuge. So
Yeah.
they work together. And as you said, all of this is in cahoots with the war machine. And none of this is ultimately even benefiting those refugees and those people who are arriving to Europe, who are maybe seeking a better life. How are they benefiting from any of this? Because they will become collateral one way or the other, because things are coming to head. I mean, you see what's happening in Great Britain. You see what's happening in France now. These people now these people, meaning the immigrants, are going to
Mhm.
be blamed for every ill of their society, where we should turn around and look at Starmer, look at Macron and Starmer
Right.
just now. But, this goes back um, to many, many different prime ministers of Great Britain. This goes back to Germany. This goes back to Angela Merkel and the European Union, and this whole project of diversity is our strength. Well, somehow we're finding out it's not, for whatever reason. But as I said, the regular people, even here in this country, unfortunately may become collateral damage, and everything will be blamed on them. But it's not being blamed on the politicians that have actually inflicted all of this upon us and the
Yeah.
immigrants all around the world. So again,
Right.
knock on Angela Merkel's door, knock on Ursula von der Leyen's door, knock on Starmer's, knock on little Macron's, knock on the doors of our politicians here. The political class has caused this tectonic movement of people, where, look, when we established this, as they call it, the open society, the economics are meant to move the goods and services for the benefit of people, not necessarily to move the people around. So if we have a healthy economy, which we don't, that will benefit the people without the need for them to go anywhere. But if
Yeah.
they have no benefit in their own house, if they have no prospects of getting a job, of getting their kids educated, well, what are they going to do? And plus, you have bombs falling on them. So yes, they're not to blame.
Right.
Absolutely, I agree. But who is to blame? So instead of turning our eye, and look, if you look at countries that have somewhat homogenous, high trust society, they have less diversity that is not vetted. Not less diversity overall, just less diversity that's unvetted, that's just sort of like, bring anybody in. Well, we used to bring the best and the brightest. That was the idea, at least from what I understood. Not anymore. So I think there has to be some sort of a system, there has to be a process. We are a country that was built on immigration, but not the type of immigration that is happening right now. I picture a country as your own home, as your own marriage. And if there is no harmony, it doesn't work. So I think the question is there harmony right now? Are we a high trust society? Which, you and I just talked about the big cities. Can you safely live in a big city and feel like you're living in a high trust society? And I think those are all questions that we may disagree. And I think back to
Mhm.
the national conversation, that is precisely the reason why we want to have this much needed conversation where the American people can even disagree. We may disagree on the panel, um, how we proceed, what are the causes to all of this, and ultimately what the solutions are, because the solutions will actually come from disagreement. We cannot exist in an echo chamber. And we also cannot exist in a country where you are being constantly told what to think, what to believe, who to like, and who to dislike, and you who can and cannot criticize. No one's beyond criticism.
Yeah. Though
So that's
that,
kind of where I'm at.
yeah. Well, certainly, what I love about America is the fact that we do have a lot more freedom than I think most places in the world. I do think that we, as much as, and also when people say, oh, America's so racist, right? We heard this from the left for a long time. America's so racist and whatnot. But I mean, the United States is one of the least racist countries in the world, in my opinion.
100%,
Um,
I agree.
and one of the most free. And I think COVID really opened my eyes to the freedom of the United States.
Hmm.
um, Really, there was no place in the world I would have rather been during COVID than the United States for, well, I mean, for Sweden or, Iceland. I mean, there were some other countries that,
Right.
never locked down. They didn't do all that stuff, but still,
Free state of
the fact,
Florida. I was in
yeah,
Florida.
right. And I was living in California at the time, but the thing is I could have moved. I could have left for a more freedom state. We had different states with different attitudes in the
Hmm.
country, and that was kind of nice to, to have those options or to at least escape for a weekend to a freedom state so that you could actually sit in a restaurant or something along those
Yeah.
lines. Even just in Los Angeles, just all I had to do was drive down to Orange County, which is more red, and then I could actually sit in a restaurant. But that's kind of what's cool about the United States is the fact that we do have all these different areas governed by different people and they politically swing different ways and we're not all a big hegemon that's all running in the same, one way. It's we kind of have more choices because of the federal
Yes.
system that we have.
And it's
Um
something that you said that just strikes me, um, constantly being labeled and accused of racism, of bigotry. Show me a country where immigrants, minorities are more successful than the United States.
yeah,
Show me a
exactly. I
country,
mean, right.
and we'll all go there. It doesn't
Yeah,
exist. We have embraced everyone, and this country has given so many people the economic mobility that they could never dream of in their own native countries. But that must be appreciated, that must be respected, and people who come must abide by certain rules. They cannot
right.
become emboldened to impose whatever it is that they're bringing from their native countries, including conflicts that they have amongst each other. Come here, become an American. Yes, maintain your culture, maintain
Mhm.
your traditions. This is the country that allows you to do that and cherishes that, but respect it and appreciate it.
Absolutely. I think it would be good for right now. There's a big conversation going on. We've seen this, especially particularly on the right, but a little bit on the left, of what are the values? What are American values, right? And we're hearing a lot about Judeo-Christian values, or maybe it's white values, or European values, right? There's a lot
Is
of
it a Christian nationalism thing that is emerging, and nationalism became
certainly.
a dirty word? But is it really a dirty word? I think nationalism is a healthy dose of love for your country.
Sure. I just think, but it is it's an interesting conversation that's going on. It's causing, um, and there's a lot of sentiments I don't agree with. I don't agree that the country is built on Christian values as much as people want to claim that. I think there's a big Christian push to say the United States, for example, is built on Christian values, and um, I just don't agree. I think that when I ask them, well, what exactly is that value? Like, tell me what those values are. And they kind of cite like the 10 Commandments. And I'm like, well, Muslims also, by the way, adhere to Moses and the 10 Commandments. That's not a Christian thing. That's an Abrahamic thing. But then you look at other countries and they also have their own version of basically the 10 Commandments, right? I mean, so these are more human values than anything, like don't kill each
Right.
other, don't rob from each other, right? Don't, do all these are just intrinsically human values. So I don't know.
And
I
I
mean,
think
there's
that is the question that we often have. Would we have, just as you said, as human beings, would we abide by these values, and would we have these values if we had a Christian nation or a nation of any other faith, or
right.
or a nation of, different faiths? But what is, as you said, that human value? What is our lowest common denominator? But also, what is it that made America really so great for a specific time? And I don't know if we are still um, going through that greatness period. I certainly wish we can get it back. I remember the 80s, not the 80s so much, but the 90s. And I think you and I maybe have gone through even similar cultural aspect of, I know you've been in alternative radio, and there was a different culture to the United States at the time of me growing up, and hearing different kind of music, and watching different types of movies. So there was some sort of a consolidated common denominator where we knew what it meant to be an American. And now
Yeah.
we sort of, it's like a new punk rock type thing to get back into, not raging with the machine, but kind of raging against the machine, because even our, the punk and the rock and the alternative music has kind of like swung together with the machine, and I'm bothered by that.
Yeah, right. Especially
Everything
Rage speaking of
became
Rage
part of.
Against the Machine, that
Yes,
band, which totally
exactly.
went with it.
Like I want to be the new Sex Pistols and be kind of
Right.
rebellious, and be in that new conversation that is the new counterculture, where we're not censoring each other, and we're not stifling speech, and we're not at war all over the place. And so these are not novel ideas, but it seems like, calling for peace is a controversial matter. Why? We want peace in the Middle East. We want peace in Ukraine and Russia. So I think we need to get back precisely to
Yeah.
these conversations, and we will become more educated when we disagree, when we hear the other person. So we need to have a civil discourse without attacking the person, on the basis of personality or basis of whatever it is. Um, we will be much better for it.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you broke up for just a
Oh,
second there.
sorry,
It
something.
froze.
Yes, I noticed something first.
Okay, it's all right.
Thank you.
Um, well, I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation that you guys end up having on October 4th. The event is called the National Conversation. You've got Colonel McGregor, Andrew Napolitano, Olga Ravasi. There also Natalie Brunel will be there as well. Will there be others that
Yes,
are
we're
in
going
this?
to have some special guests, and we are expecting people like yourself to please come. If you can, we would love to have you there.
It'd be
Um,
definitely fun.
we have people who are running podcasts, who are actually, and I certainly commend you and all of the other podcasters, and as we call it now, alternative media. We don't watch TV anymore, and all credit to Elon Musk for opening X, for our ability to have this discourse and to have these conversations where alternate voices can be heard on shows such as yours. So we do invite podcasters, we do invite different media personalities, people who simply want to contribute to this conversation, who come from all walks of life and who come from different political aisles. Because
Yeah.
again, look, it shouldn't be about Democrats and Republicans anymore. It's kind of a fraudulent idea, because we realize it's a uniparty. It shouldn't be about the left, the right. It's about the people, and exactly what you were asking, what is that lowest common denominator? Who are we at this current stage in this country's life, and how do we reclaim the public square, and how do we reclaim the narrative and the discourse that is ultimately going to benefit the people? So
Yeah.
please, if you can make it, we would love to have you there, and then you will also be able to engage with the panel and with the people who are there. They may have questions for you as well.
Excellent. Thenationalconversation.org. We do have that link below. Dr. Olga Ravasi, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Really
Thank
appreciate your
you.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.